Rev up your engine! Here we got an old Trailblazer. It's running poorly. It was purchased used. It sat for over a year, and it may have sat for 5 or 6 years before that. Misfire, and then all of a sudden, it runs perfectly fine. They drove it on the highway. Here on the highway, it ran like a clock. So we got to put our thinking caps to figure out what's going on with this. But there's some commonalities with other cars I've fixed before. Here's a warning when you buy a used vehicle. Don't always believe what it says on the speedometer. In this case, the speedo says 133,853. Somebody was stupid. We look under the hood, 245,759. This is Jasper engines. A Jasper remanufactured engine was put in, so that's a remanufactured engine. So we have no idea what the mileage is now, but it's obviously well over 250,000 miles. It's got a lot of mileage on it, and it's sat for quite some time. We're going to look at data right away because the check engine light's on, but a lot of people have checked this thing out and they'll say, we can't find out what's wrong. There's no codes for the engine not running right, and they're scratching their heads. So, first thing we're going to do is look at the data and realize one thing. On this baby, fuel pump inside a gas tank. If a car sits for years, often the fuel pump will rust, crud will collect in the gas tank. This baby might need the gas tank completely taken off or replaced and a new pump put in, because they'll often go bad sitting all those years with old gasoline in them. Now, in normal conditions, a car that sat all that time, and then she got it in the last year, she's only been able to drive it for 3 weeks, so it's been sitting. I changed the fuel filter, but see, by looking at the door, it was made in 10 of 04, which counts as an 05. Unfortunately, in this vehicle, the fuel filter is inside the gas tank. You got to drop the gas tank to get to it. They advise changing the filter and the pump as a unit when they go bad. And when I looked around, lo and behold, there isn't a filter in front of the gas tank. There's only fuel lines coming out. So we're going to start with data. I'm trying X-Tool D9. This is one of their top of line ones, and I've had pretty good luck with these. Look at the code report. Okay, what do we have? Insufficient switching of bank 1, sensor 1, idle speed low, heating and air conditioning. We don't care about that in the radio. We're only interested in the oxygen sensor not switching on bank 1, and that the idle speed is low. Now, this engine is a Vortec 4200, and they're really dependable engines. Now, I do have to wonder why the original engine replaced, but still, that's 245,000 miles. We don't know how people treated the previous engine. This one was rebuilt by Jasper, and as it stands now, it's running like a clock. I doubt if there's any engine problem. To me, I'm thinking fuel problem, because it sat so long. So, numero uno, first, we're going to clear the codes. All cleared. Then we're going to look at data. We'll look at the powertrain data, look at live data, engine live data. Here we go. Yeah, they're still kind of squirrely, so we'll start with fuel trim, because I think it's got a fuel problem. You can see the short-term fuel trim as it stands now is perfect, and the long-term is subtracting 2%. That's not bad for a vehicle that's probably got well over 250,000 miles on it. Sure feels like it's starving for fuel. Not enough fuel, which would be the fuel tank's probably going to need to be taken off and cleaned. Probably going to need another fuel pump. That's going to be all rusty for sitting for years. And when you change that, you change the fuel pump and filter assembly that's inside the gas tank. Because you can see as we rev it up, the value doesn't change any, other than the long-term fuel trims adding 4%. Now it's back to 0. And you can see I'm flooring it, and the RPMs actually went down, and it's running worse. I have my foot on the floor now. Look. And it just stalled out. From this data after we started, the injector pulse width, watch, we rev it up, it's going up like it's supposed to. It's being given the right amount of information, but it won't rev over a certain RPM. And I know something else. The evap vent solenoid is venting the whole time. It should be turning itself off. When we're sitting here and drive, it should not be venting, but it is. So there's a problem with the evap vent solenoid. Well, face the facts, this thing sat for years, and then in the last year, it's only been driven for 2 or 3 weeks. It's probably got multiple problems. You can see the whole time we're driving, the evap vent solenoid is venting. Also see, even though the temperature is normal, right in the middle, we're running an open loop, not even closed loop. So the whole time the vehicle is running in warm-up status. It has not reached open loop, so something is keeping it from running an open loop where everything is going to start feeding back. The oxygen sensor will tell the computer how much fuel to give in it. It's in open loop. It's not in closed. We want it in closed loop. It's got to go in a closed loop to run correctly. On this other data system, we see the short-term fuel trim 0. It's minus 2% long-term fuel trim. That's nothing. Now we got lucky, and then the first thing that came immediately back was oxygen sensor, high voltage, bank 1, sensor 1. I cleared that code. It immediately came back. So, we're going to get an oxygen sensor for this thing. Here it is in this plastic bag. If it goes bad, it'll keep the car in open loop. It won't run right until it's in closed loop. So, we're hoping this is the only thing that's wrong. It's logical because I'd set all the codes off to 0. It had no codes. Immediately, it tripped the code for this. So, we're going to hope this fixes it, at least to get it running good enough. Like I say, it's probably going to have the gas tank pulled, cleaned out, fuel pump filter changed. That's all future considerations. The obvious things first. These things are tall, so get yourself a little step ladder here. There's the sensor. Bolts on right down here. We'll have to get all this air intake crap out of the way. Now this is all rusted, so we put a vice grip plier and a screwdriver here. So now when we turn it, we should be able to unscrew it. And there it goes. What an annoying pile of crap. Now we can get it out of the way. Take that off. Get that out of the way. Now we have some working room, even though this is still annoying as can be. Now I have an oxygen sensor wrench that fits on there. So we'll put it on. As you can see right there, there it is. It fits on. We'll pull it off. And I mean pull. These things can be stuck on. Never much fun, that's for sure. We'll push as hard as we can. Break it loose. In case it just slips, so we're getting a longer extension bar here. And now when we push, there she goes. It's breaking loose. Longer's always better. Now we'll unplug the other end of the oxygen sensor and unscrew the rest of it by hand. And out it comes. Now before we put it back together, we'll make sure both ends are the same, the plug ends are the same. And you'll notice there's a lot of rust and corrosion on this. Now just the fact that that's all kind of rusty shows this thing sat. Fuel's probably all messed up. Might have to have the tank replaced or the pump replaced, but we know this isn't working, so we're going to replace this first. Just screws in, then we tighten it using the socket. And you get it nice and tight so it doesn't get any air leaks. It's got a crush washer, so you snug it up and maybe a quarter of a turn, and that's it. And don't forget to plug it back in or it won't work. Just snaps in one way. There it goes. Snapped in, and then the end plugs in here so it doesn't fall out. Put the air box back on, tighten the clamps, make sure that's on solid, tighten all the clamps, and the stupid half broken one. Then we'll reset the computer. We'll turn the key on so it'll communicate. Then we go to the scan tool. As we can see, there's the oxygen sensor code, so we're going to clear it. Now we're going to start it up. Take it for a spin. So we'll take it for a good 10-15 minute spin, see how it acts, and then look at the data. So far it's running perfectly fine. Now it's an old truck, don't believe the 133. We know it's at least 250,000. Got a lot of miles on it. It's running smooth. We come to a stop. Roll the window up too since we're gonna go faster. So idling perfect so far. It's pretty smooth for a transmission that's got 250,000 miles on it at least, and the engine's running really good. But then again, it was a Jasper remanufactured, and it's probably only been in there maybe 30,000 miles or something. For a spin in the country, so far it's running like a clock. This thing's so old, I'm not going to mess around with the drag strip stop. We're just going to drive it fast and see what happens. You can see it's going way over what it went before. We'll only go to 3. Smooth shift. It's actually running like a clock now. We'll take it to the other end of the airport and come back. And here we go to the green light, make a little turn. No problem with the stalling or anything. Floored, it's accelerating good. Hey, good news. So far, so good. And there we have it. You can see the loop status, closed loop. So what have we learned? Well, we learned that if your car's a problem and it's staying in open loop and not closed loop, you have to fix that first. Because if it stays in open loop, it's going to think the engine isn't all warmed up, give it the wrong amount of fuel, won't run right. Always fix that first. And what else did we learn? Well, this D9X tool is a good scan tool. It did its job quick, fast, got to be able to figure the problem out and fix it like that. We also learned that in this case, it's an old vehicle, so it was only 45 bucks for the oxygen sensor at O'Reilly's Auto Parts store. So, hey, it didn't cost much for the part. And we also learned something else out. That the Jasper engines and transmissions did a really good job rebuilding this engine. Smooth, still has a lot of power. Now, it was running like crap. It wasn't the engine's fault, it was the oxygen sensor fault. Now, some of that could have been from the old gas being in there a really long time, so I'm gonna tell her an old trick my grandfather taught me years ago. And that's this: unless you're willing to drop the gas tank, flush it all out, probably put a fuel pump and a filter in it, pretend that the 1/4 mark, when it's down to 1/4 of a tank, pretend that's E. And when it gets down there, fill it up. Just don't use that bottom, because there could be a lot of crud on the bottom. And as long as you keep it full, half, a little under half, it might not act up all. But if you find you get low, under 1/4 starts acting up, you're gonna have to pull this tank. It's running fine now. If it does do when it gets low, I'll tell you, they need to take the tank. This 250,000 plus mileage GM product is still rolling down the road pretty good. I gotta say, I'm impressed, like I said, with the Jasper remanufactured. Did a good job on the engine, one oxygen sensor, and it's running like a top again. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.